the king in the Dark Continent. And if Meruem had somehow survived, or had been born in the Dark Continent, what would become of him? Or how would the events leading up to his death change his strategies and development, and how could he deal with the Dark Continent? Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the bell, because today's video is insane. The Dark Continent in Hunter x Hunter. The narrative almost inevitably takes a dark tone, laden with a dense mystery that evokes both fascination and terror. That land, unexplored by the eyes of the known world, is described not only as a vast and dangerous territory, but as the source of horrors and entities so incomprehensible that the mere attempt to understand them defies logic and morality. It is in this scenario that one of the boldest and perhaps most disturbing questions is posed. How would Meruem, the king of the Chimera Ants, behave if he were thrown into the heart of the Dark Continent? What role would he play in the face of forces that defy the very definition of what it means to be alive? And more than that, would he be just another survivor, or would he become part of a greater purpose? Worse still, would he be recognized as a new calamity? To understand this, we need to go back to what Meruem represents. From his birth, he was conceived as the pinnacle of predatory evolution. The Chimera Ant Queen, by absorbing thousands of humans in her feeding, created a being destined for absolute domination. Meruem was born not only physically superior to all others, but with a learning and adaptation capacity that made him an existential threat to the human species. In just a few days, he understood complex strategic systems, refined his worldview, and evolved spiritually through his contact with Komugi. At first, he was a symbol of natural brutality, the supremacy of the strong. In the end, he became a mirror of the human condition. He desired to understand, love, and protect, and it is precisely this duality that makes him a perfect enigma for the Dark Continent. Because the calamities described up until now, AI, Brian, Papu, Zobai, Hellbell, are not just monsters. They are archetypes. Each one represents an uncontrollable impulse that exists within the human being: obsessive love, the lethal instinct for defense, insatiable hunger, the corruption of ideas, and the madness of the unconscious. They are pure, raw, violent, and symbolic forces. They have no morality, no dilemmas. They do not dialogue with the world. They invade it, deform it, and rewrite it. Their presence in the human world is so destabilizing that it led the Council of the Five Nations to create the treaty that restricts any travel beyond the sea, a pact of silence in the face of horror. In contrast, Meruem is not an uncontrollable force. He is a force that thinks. And for that very reason, he could be even more dangerous. If we imagined Meruem in the Dark Continent, he wouldn't be a foreign body. Quite the opposite. He could be recognized by that dark ecosystem as a piece that had always been missing. It wouldn't be the monster being thrown into the territory of the beasts. It would be the key piece returning home. And this idea gains even more strength when we analyze, one by one, the calamities and how Meruem symbolically relates to what they represent. Starting with AI, the calamity that embodies possessive love. In its raw form, AI represents the distortion of affection, the desire for absolute control over another under the pretense of love. And Meruem, in his final evolution, develops a deep affection for Komugi, a love so intense that it challenges the very logic of his existence as a predator. He gives up the world, the war, the throne, his project of domination, all in the name of that bond. And he does so with almost divine devotion. If AI is sickly love, Meruem is love that frees, but this line is thin. The same emotional power that elevated him could, under other circumstances, turn him into a refined version of AI, an entity that loves so much that it destroys everything around to preserve the object of its affection. The difference is one of choice, but the raw material is the same. Brian, in turn, is a weapon that responds to threats with automatic violence. It is the embodiment of the defense instinct taken to the extreme. And Meruem, when threatened, responds in almost the same way. His fight with Netero reveals this. He first tries to negotiate, but when attacked with the force of Zero Hand and the poor Rose Bomb, his response is total destruction. If it weren't for the radiation, he would have decimated all of his enemies. Meruem is conscious, but his response to extreme hostility is equally extreme. He shares with Brian not only the power, but the function. He is a guardian, an executor, an agent of retaliation. If placed as protector of the Dark Continent, perhaps his mission would be to prevent any intrusion, and for that, he would not hesitate to become a judge and executioner of all humanity. With Papu, the calamity of eternal hunger, the connection is even more visceral. Meruem, in his childhood, devours humans. His appetite is literal, physical. But as he evolves, this hunger becomes symbolic. He desires knowledge, understanding, transcendence. He wants knowledge, art, wisdom, and wishes to nourish his soul. But the hunger remains. It is insatiable. When he realizes that humanity has something he doesn't understand, feelings, compassion, contradiction, it torments him. He can't consume this. And perhaps that's why Komugi is so fascinating to him. Because she is the food he cannot digest, the enigma he cannot solve. Meruem, like Papu, is defined by what he lacks. His hunger is what drives him. And in the Dark Continent, where everything feeds on everything, he might be seen as the most voracious of all, but also the most tragic. Zobai, the plague of ideas, represents a type of power more subtle, but no less destructive. It doesn't kill with claws or teeth, but with concepts. It insinuates, corrupts, and transforms cultures and structures with new ideas that destroy the old ones. Meruem, as he emerges as a king, begins to implement a new kind of order. He challenges human hierarchies, proposes a cruel meritocracy based on absolute power. Then, as he evolves emotionally, he suggests another kind of order, one in which the strongest is the one who protects. In both cases, his ideas have the power to subvert the world. Meruem, if he had survived, would have forever changed the political, moral, and military structure of the planet. In this sense, he is Zobai with awareness. He is the idea that knows it is dangerous and still persists. And finally, Hellbell, the Serpent of Madness. This calamity is an entity that tears apart sanity, a presence that leads to psychological collapse. And here, the relationship is more abstract, but no less profound, because Meruem also leads to madness, not his own, but that of those who face him. Netero, a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, is reduced to a desperate man who resorts to a dirty weapon. Gon, when facing the grief of Kite, plunges into a furious self-destruction that mirrors the poison of Hellbell. Meruem doesn't directly cause insanity, but his existence forces others to confront what they cannot accept, defeat inferiority, doubt about what is right. And that drives them mad. He is a mirror, and many prefer to destroy the mirror than accept their own image. Given all of this, it is possible to speculate that, in the Dark Continent, Meruem would not be a foreigner. He would be understood. More than that, he would be welcomed, perhaps not as an ally, but as an equal. And on a more metaphysical level, one could imagine that the birth of Meruem was a kind of echo of the Dark Continent within the known world. A breach, a leak, something from that profane land found a way to be born within humanity. A herald, a warning. If the world struggled to deal with a single creature like Meruem, what would it do in the face of entities that are not only older and more powerful, but that represent universal forces? But there is another path, more unsettling. What if Meruem was not just another calamity? What if he was the synthesis, the sixth calamity, something that united the others into one being? He has AI's love, Brian's strength, Papu's hunger, Zobai's idea, Hellbell's emotional tension, and more. He has what none of the others have, awareness. Perhaps the Dark Continent, over millennia, incubated these entities as scattered parts of something greater. And Meruem, born on human soil, would be the final form, the catalyst, a being who carries all the other calamities within him, but with the ability to decide what to do with that power. The beginning of a new era, or the end of all others. In a hypothetical scenario, where Meruem was released into the Dark Continent, his trajectory would depend on his emotional state. If it were the Meruem from the beginning, the predatory king, arrogant, merciless, he might become an even deadlier calamity, an entity that would take the continent for himself and declare war on the world. But if it were the Meruem who died in Komugi's arms, full of regret, love, and understanding, perhaps he would become something completely new, a bridge, a mediator between horror and hope, a creature who understands the calamities, because he was once one, but who chooses another path. In this context, the Dark Continent would become not just a battlefield, but a field of reflection, a mirror of the soul, and Meruem, with his unique trajectory, would have the power to rewrite what it means to be a calamity. He would show that even the deadliest of beings can evolve, that even hunger can give way to affection, that even chaos can generate understanding. and that perhaps the real terror doesn't lie in the creatures, but in the refusal to accept them. And that is why, in the end, Meruem in the Dark Continent would not just be a hypothetical confrontation. It would be an allegory of what happens when power meets consciousness. And perhaps, just perhaps, he would be the only thing capable of saving the world from what lies beyond the sea.